What's up, guys? So I would say most people that have played Baldur's Gate 3 have either played Dungeons & Dragons before, or Baldur's Gate 3 made them want to play D&D. In the case that you're in the camp that has never played D&D either before or after Baldur's Gate 3, BG3 is basically Dungeons & Dragons, a video game, in case you were not aware. But there's quite a few things that are a bit different in Baldur's Gate 3 and Dungeons & Dragons and vice versa. There's some things that are a lot better in Baldur's Gate 3, while there are others that are much better in Dungeons & Dragons. So, for example, the skill Fast Hands, which is granted by the Thief subclass, in D&D, all it does is allow you to use your bonus action to disarm a trap, open a lock, or use an object, while Fast Hands in Baldur's Gate 3 just straight up grants you a second bonus action. Conversely, Rangers in Baldur's Gate 3 are really good, while Rangers in D&D are borderline unplayable. Rangers are so bad in 5e that the running joke is if you want to play a Ranger-like character, you're better off just rolling a bow fighter, as it will outperform an actual Ranger in almost every scenario. There's a feat in Baldur's Gate 3 that a lot of players take that looks good on paper, but I think there are just better options to take. Hopefully by the end of this video, I'll convince you to stop taking this feat at all, or at least stop taking it first. So let's jump into it. So if you haven't guessed it already, the feat I'm talking about is ability improvement. Now, don't get me wrong, ability improvement isn't a bad feat. I just believe that there are better options, especially as your first feat. Getting a +2 permanently to a stat seems really good on paper, but not at the cost of one of your maximum of 3 feats that you can obtain. There's a feat that is much better than ability improvement on almost every single class, and that is Alert. And this is where I think players' knowledge of D&D actually hurts them in regards to this feat. The reason this feat is so busted is because the way the feat works in BG3 is completely different than in Dungeons & Dragons. What Alert does is grant you +5 to your initiative roll, and you cannot be surprised. Sounds like an okay feat, but not one of the best feats in the game, right? This comes down to the way that initiative is calculated in BG3 versus D&D. In D&D, initiative is calculated by rolling a d20 plus your dexterity modifier, and that is your initiative score. So Alert in D&D is only a 25% increase to your initiative roll, which is pretty good all things considered, but not OP or busted. In Baldur's Gate 3, initiative is still based on your dexterity modifier, but the difference is it's rolled on a d4 opposed to a d20. By BG3 calculating initiative on a d4 opposed to a d20, it makes any increases or decreases to your initiative hugely impactful. So a +4 to a d4 roll is a 125% increase opposed to just a 25% increase in D&D. To keep the math simple, let's say no one has a dexterity modifier and every enemy rolls a 4 for their initiative. Because of Alert, even if you roll a 1, because you're getting a +5 to your die roll, you will beat out every single enemy's max roll, meaning you will almost always go first. If your entire party gets a chance to go before the enemy, you can usually take out several enemies before the fight even starts. I take this feat first on almost every single character that I play, with a few exceptions. There are a couple of classes that benefit more from another feat as their first feat, and then I'll usually take Alert second. If you're playing a monk, barbarian, or druid, taking tavern brawler as your first feat I think is the way to go. If you're not planning on throwing things as a barbarian, or if you're not playing a Circle of the Moon druid, then you probably don't need to take this. With the near infinite supply of elixirs of Hill Giant Strength in Act 1, being able to apply your strength modifier twice to your unarmed attacks makes you do a ton of damage as a monk. If you're planning on using elixirs of Hill Giant Strength, just dump your strength to 8 and use the +1 from Tavern Brawler on your constitution, not your strength. The reason why this feat is so good on a wild shaping druid is that your attacks, while wild shaped, count as an unarmed attack, meaning the damage amp from Tavern Brawler will apply. If you're playing a paladin or a fighter using a two-handed weapon, the best feat to take first is Great Weapon Master. Being able to get a second attack if you crit or kill an enemy is really strong, especially since you can get this at level 4 before most other classes get a second attack. The -5 to hit kind of sucks, but the +10 damage coupled with the additional attack is really nice. You can toggle this off in the passive sections in case your chance to hit is too low, or if you want to ensure you kill a dangerous enemy. If you're playing a bow-based character, Sharpshooter is a great feat to take first. Sharpshooter is basically the bow version of Great Weapon Master. It gives you a -5 chance to hit, but it grants an additional 10 damage to your attacks. This is really impactful if you're dual wielding hand crossbows, as the +10 extra damage really adds up. Doubly so if you're playing a swords bard. I actually made a video about this very thing. I'll put a link up in the corner of this video. But just like Great Weapon Master, you can toggle this on or off as needed. Lastly, Sharpshooter also does not penalize you for high ground rules, meaning if one of your characters knocks down an enemy, you will not be penalized for the enemy being prone like you would without this feat. Lastly, if you are a spellcaster, you can consider taking Spell Sniper as your first feat. I don't personally care for this feat, but it's pretty good if you're going all in on spellcasting. Having a higher chance to crit and being able to select a cantrip that scales off of your spellcasting modifier is pretty nice. What this means is you can select this feat as a cleric and then choose Eldritch Blast as your cantrip and have it scale off your wisdom opposed to charisma. Hopefully after watching this video, you will at least consider other options for your feat choice over ability improvement. There are over 40 selectable feats in Baldur's Gate 3, and I only covered a handful that I think are really good for most builds and most situations. There are quite a few that are very good in certain niche builds. For example, Elemental Adept is really good if you're going all in on a certain elemental type of spell damage. Do you have any feats that you use that are not very popular but are very strong in your build? Let me know in the comments section. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. I make weekly content on various gaming topics like build guides, game reviews, and gaming news. Until next time, have a great day/night. See ya.